So joining us now, we have constitutional law expert, Loyola law professor Jessica Levinson joining us. And Jessica, I want to start with the question of, President Biden stepping aside, saying he's endorsing Kamala Harris. And I just want to hone in on what she said in her statement, that she's going to earn and win. So just because the former president or the current president is stepping aside doesn't mean this is a done deal. There's stuff that still needs to be worked out in terms of the DNC, right?
This is such a good question because it's not for President Biden to say, and now delegates who pledged to support me, here's who you should support instead. All of these delegates become free agents and they get to choose who to vote for. So the fact that he is endorsing Kamala Harris obviously has huge symbolic importance. Let's remember that these pledged delegates were approved of by the Biden-Harris campaign. And so they are likely to be not just supportive of President Biden, but also to support whoever he picks. And so this obviously, again, has huge symbolic significance, but he doesn't get to say. It is up to each of these delegates to decide who they want to vote for. And this now becomes a political question of who, if anyone, is going to mount a real challenge against Vice President Harris. But again, not a legal question, a political question.
Yeah, and in terms of that political question, too, there were some reports from Jake Tapper over at CNN that he talked to now independent West Virginia senator who is leaving office, Joe Manchin, saying that he's thinking about re-registering as a Democrat and potentially throwing his hat into the race. That obviously, we'll have to wait and see if that plays out. But I want to ask you, too, about in terms of campaign finance here. So we have all of these donations, tens of millions of dollars to the Biden-Harris campaign. That potentially creates a challenge, right? If someone else were to come and enter this race, it's not like all of that money can just be transferred to another Democratic candidate.
If somebody whose last name is not Harris tries to use that money, good luck to them. That's exactly right. So there's a lot of money that Democrats have raised, and some of it is in state party organizations, and some of it the DNC holds. And then obviously there's third party organizations, super PACs, et cetera. But there's about, I think, as of May, $91 million and change that Biden-Harris have themselves raised. And under the Federal Election Commission rules, it's really Kamala Harris who can tap into that bank account. If it's somebody else, now there are options here, but I think none of them are as easy as Kamala Harris just saying, that money was raised for the Biden-Harris ticket. Here I am. My last name is Harris, and I'm going to use that money now.
So former President Donald Trump weighing into and some other Republicans calling what's happening here anti-democratic. Are there any potential legal challenges to what we're seeing right now and Biden stepping aside and folks saying, OK, all of these voters in the primary put their name behind, Joe Biden, and then there's this switcheroo right before the convention? Are there any legal challenges to what's happening right now?
So I think we should expect to see legal challenges, but I do not expect that they will be successful ones, because let's remember, there was no nominee this morning. There was a presumptive nominee this morning. So there was nobody to replace on the ballots. Joe Biden did not get the official, sometimes there was some discussion of having a roll call vote so that Joe Biden was the nominee before the convention, but none of this happened. And so I understand that there's some political expediency to talking about these lawsuits, but the weight of authority this is up to the convention, and there is nobody that you're asking to be replaced on an election ballot.
And do you think, this conversation is not going to be over. You have lawmakers going back to Capitol Hill, and it's already being floated right now. If Joe Biden is not equipped to run for president, should he still remain the president of the United States? And do you see, lawmakers on the right saying, OK, let's talk 25th Amendment here?
Oh, absolutely, because I think we've already started to hear the beginning of those conversations. And let's be honest, the debate was a true disaster for Joe Biden. That's why we're having this conversation now, and in part because it didn't look like a one-off. So there will be a question. Now, of course, these are different considerations, right? Do you want to run for another 4 years versus can you serve out this term? But I think you're asking me about the only provision of the 25th Amendment that has never been used before. That would take who says, okay, we're pulling the trigger. It's the vice president and a majority of the cabinet. And at this point, I do not see that group saying that President Biden cannot serve the remainder of his term. And without that group pulling the trigger, I don't see the 25th Amendment coming into play.
I wanted to clear that up. You're the perfect person to explain that out, because a lot of chatter about that as well. Professor Jessica Levinson, appreciate you giving us some time on this busy news evening, sharing your expertise and analysis.
Thank you.